What happens when the machinery designed to keep us safe turns into the very thing a community feels it needs protection from?
And more importantly, can the definition of safety actually, tear up the entire social contract?
It's a huge question. We're going to be unpacking a very intense set of events today, and as always, we really want to hear your take.
Definitely. If this deep dive sparks a thought, drop a comment or share this with a friend who loves digging into the why behind the headlines.
So, on the surface, we have a standoff between a president and a governor. But is there a hidden mechanism at play here that could actually change how elections are run in 2026 and 2028?
Stick around, because the answer, it might really surprise you.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are looking at a highly volatile flashpoint in Minneapolis involving President Trump, Governor Tim Walz, and Mayor Jacob Frey.
It's a lot. We've got protests, the National Guard being deployed, and at the center of it all is the heartbreaking and very controversial death of a man named Alex Frey.
It's a situation that feels like it's moving a mile a minute.
It really does. But our mission today isn't just to look at the timeline. We need to analyze the conflicting narratives coming out of the federal administration versus the state officials.
Right.
And we have a specific Truth Social post to dissect. Which sources allege was architected by Stephen Miller, and some pretty heavy constitutional arguments raised by Jamie Raskin.
Exactly. And just to be clear for everyone listening, we are reporting on what the source material says. We're going to distinguish between the administration's claims and the counter-arguments found in the text.
Absolutely.
So let's start with the event that, lit the match. The shooting of Alex Frey.
The divergence in how this man is described in the source material it's jarring. It's almost as if we're looking at two completely different realities.
Totally. On one side, you have the administration's view. We're talking about President Trump, Kristi Noem, Greg Bovino. The source quotes them describing Frey as a domestic terrorist. They called him crazed and said he was running at law enforcement with intent to kill.
Which paints a very, very specific picture of an aggressor. It frames the state's actions as a necessary reaction to an immediate threat.
Of course.
But then you look at the local perspective provided in the source material, and the profile is, well, it's radically different. This wasn't a career criminal. Alex Frey was an accomplished ICU nurse.
An ICU nurse. That's not exactly the profile of a domestic terrorist.
No. And the source adds more context. He was a veteran. The source emphasizes he was a lawful firearm owner and was deeply beloved by his family and community.
Wow.
Governor Walz even explicitly mentioned his skill and his ability to work with veterans. So you have domestic terrorist on one hand.
And beloved ICU nurse on the other. That is a massive gap. Usually there's some kind of gray area, but here the characterizations are polar opposites.
They really are.
And it gets murkier, right? Because there's an allegation of a cover-up mentioned in the source.
That's a critical detail that really complicates the whole narrative. The source claims that the official narrative was spun, and this is a quote, within minutes of this event happening.
Within minutes.
But more concerning are the procedural allegations. The source states that the crime scene was closed immediately, evidence was swept away, and this is the big one, a court order to preserve the scene was defied.
Defying a court order. I mean, that is a heavy accusation. Usually, crime scenes are locked down for preservation, not cleaned up.
Exactly. In standard police procedure, preserving evidence is paramount, especially in an officer-involved shooting. So if the source is accurate that a court order was ignored, that implies a deliberate attempt to control the evidence.
Before anyone independent could look at it.
Before independent investigators could assess it. And that brings us to the constitutional crisis that Jamie Raskin is highlighting. The source attributes a very strong legal argument to him.
Raskin is the one bringing up the Second Amendment, right? Which is interesting because, usually that's an argument we hear from the other side of the aisle. It feels like a role reversal.
Precisely. And that's what makes this so fascinating. The source notes that in Minnesota, both concealed and open carry are legal. This is a crucial piece of context.
So just having a gun isn't a crime there?
Not at all. And Raskin argues that Frey's weapon was confiscated before the shooting occurred.
Wait, let me get this straight. The allegation is that they disarmed him first and then shot him.
That is the allegation in the source. Raskin points out that an officer removed Frey's gun before two other officers opened fire, shooting him 10 times.
So if he was disarmed, where is the imminent threat justification?
That's the absolute core of Raskin's argument. He calls it domestic state terrorism. He argues it's a suppression of the First Amendment speech and assembly and the Fourth Amendment illegal search and seizure.
But the Second Amendment part is the real twist here.
It is. He's arguing that the state used the pretext of a weapon to execute a citizen who was legally carrying it.
Wow. So naturally, Governor Walz didn't take this lying down. He held a press conference, and he was pretty raw.
He was visibly emotional, yeah. He wasn't speaking in bureaucratic platitudes.
Not at all. There's this one specific line he used that really stuck out to me. He's talking about the reaction from the administration, and he says, "Sitting behind a keyboard at 2 a.m. and burping a VA nurse and a son is despicable."
It's such a visceral image. Burping. It implies, treating someone like an infant or just casually dismissing their humanity.
It really is. And he went on to say that this isn't a moment for both sides rhetoric. He called for basic human decency.
He was trying to reject the narrative being pushed by, as he put it, the most powerful people in the world.
And he specifically asked for a humane, focused, effective immigration control instead of what he was seeing.
So Walz is trying to ground the conversation back in humanity, the specific human cost of this one death. But meanwhile, the federal response, according to the source, is pivoting to something much more systemic.
Okay, let's unpack this pivot, because this is where we move from a tragic event in Minneapolis to a potential massive shift in federal policy. The governor pushes back. How does the president respond?
With a post on Truth Social. But here is where we need to look closer at the source's analysis. They claim Donald Trump didn't write this post alone.
Oh, so who's the ghostwriter?
The source alleges it was put together by Stephen Miller, and they describe Miller as the architect of every deportation operation.
Stephen Miller. Okay. For those who don't know, he's known for being the hardliner on immigration policy, the guy behind the scenes. If he's involved, this implies the post isn't just an outburst. It's a strategic document.
Exactly. It suggests this was pre-planned, or at the very least, fits into a pre-existing framework. This document laid out a list of demands for Democrat governors, specifically targeting Walz and Frey.
I've got the list here. Let's run through them because they sound soothing. Demand number 1, turn over all incarcerated illegal aliens to federal authorities.
Which sounds simple, but legally, that requires the state to use its own resources to detain people for federal civil violations, which is a very murky legal area.
Right. Okay. Demand number 2. State and local law enforcement must turn over all illegal aliens arrested by police. And then number 3, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining.
And that's the big one, assist in apprehending. That effectively deputizes local police as ICE agents.
And the last one, number 4, politicians must partner with the federal government for rapid removal.
It's a total integration of local and federal enforcement. It just races the line between a Minneapolis beat cop and a federal immigration officer.
And the Post frames all of this as just common sense, right? Like it mentions Memphis or DC as examples.
Exactly. The framing is key here. It's presented as a good faith invitation. The argument is we just want safety, so why wouldn't you cooperate? It puts the onus on the governor.
It's a trap, isn't it? If you say no, you are the one refusing safety.
The source argues that's exactly what it is. They see the demands as a massive overreach. But by framing it as common sense, if the Democrats refuse, the administration can paint them as unreasonable or even, victim blaming.
So, okay, they want cooperation. But the source material suggests this isn't actually about immigration or crime. It suggests there's a different end game. What is the real goal here, according to this analysis?
This brings us to the most alarming part of the source's theory, the Insurrection Act.
The Insurrection Act. We hear that term thrown around a lot, but let's define it. That's the break glass in case of emergency law that lets the president deploy the military domestically, right?
Correct. It allows the president to use the military to suppress civil disorder, insurrection, or rebellion. And crucially, it lets the president override a governor's refusal.
So the theory is?
The source theorizes that this invitation to cooperate is designed to be rejected. They know Walz isn't going to deputize his police force for ICE.
Of course not.
So once it's rejected, it gives the administration the pretext they need. They can say, look, the local authorities are refusing to enforce the law. There is chaos, so we have to step in.
And stepping in means?
According to the source, it means militarizing cities and overriding local authority. It's about establishing a precedent where federal power just supersedes state control, all under the guise of an emergency.
But there's another layer here that I found really surprising. The source mentions voter rolls. What does immigration enforcement have to do with voter registration? That feels like a leap.
That is the connection that turns this from a policing issue into an election issue. The source alleges that Trump effectively wants to trade removal of ICE for access to voter rolls.
That sounds like a quid pro quo. We'll back off with the heavy police presence if you give us the data.
Precisely. The logic is we need to check the voter rolls to make sure non-citizens aren't voting. But the warning in the source is that Minnesota is just a test case.
Right.
They mentioned that IC agents are currently in Phoenix. The fear is that this strategy will be deployed in swing states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Arizona.
So the idea is use this pressure, the threat of federal occupation, to get access to voter rolls ahead of the midterms and 2028.
Yes. The source explicitly worries about using this power to impose pain on voters or even to steal rolls. It creates a scenario where federal agents are deeply embedded in the mechanisms of key swing states.
That is a terrifying thought for a lot of people. It suggests the whole safety narrative is a Trojan horse for, what, election engineering.
That's the fear.
But let's look at the resource argument the source brings up. Because the administration says they need help. They can't do it alone. Is that true?
The source counters that by pointing to the budget. They note that ICE has the 5th largest military budget in the world.
5th largest? That's massive. That's bigger than the defense budgets of most countries.
It is. So the argument is, if they have that kind of funding and they still can't do their job, why are they asking local police, who are busy with murder, rape, robbery, to do it for them?
It really highlights the tension over resources. Local police have their hands full. I mean, if a cop is busy processing an immigration detainer for the feds, they aren't responding to a 911 call about a burglary.
Exactly. And the source argues that by forcing local police to become an arm of federal immigration enforcement, you're actually making communities less safe.
Because you're diverting resources.
And you're breaking trust. If a community is terrified that calling the police will lead to deportation, they just stop reporting crimes. Witnesses go silent.
So what does this all mean? When we zoom out, we're looking at a fundamental clash of philosophies here. This isn't just about one shooting.
No, we are looking at the social contract.
Talk to me about that. The source mentions the destruction of the social contract. What does that mean in this context?
The social contract is that basic, unwritten agreement. We submit to government authority because we presume the government will make us safer and protect our rights. But the source argues the administration is breaking that deal.
By making people feel less safe.
By destroying the Bill of Rights. If the government becomes the aggressor, if safety is used as a weapon against the people, the contract is void. The source lists a whole litany of amendments they claim are under attack.
Like the First Amendment suppression of speech and assembly with the protests.
The Second Amendment confiscating weapons from lawful owners like Alex Prey.
The Fourth, ignoring the need for warrants, sweeping away evidence.
And the Fifth, Ninth, and 10th. The 10th Amendment is particularly relevant here. That's the one that safeguards state rights.
Right, the powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved for the states.
Exactly. So when the federal government tries to strong-arm local police or threatens to invoke the Insurrection Act to override a governor, that's a huge 10th Amendment issue.
It's just so interesting because usually the argument for state rights comes from a conservative perspective, resisting federal environmental regulations or healthcare mandates. But here, it's completely flipped.
And that's why the source calls for a cross-party, cross-ideological coalition. They are suggesting that defending the Constitution here isn't a Democrat versus Republican issue.
It's about the fundamental structure of governance.
Right. If the Bill of Rights can be suspended for safety, then it can be suspended for anything.
It really does scramble the usual political lines. You've got gun rights, state sovereignty, free speech, all mixed into this one chaotic situation. It forces people to ask, do I support the principle or just my side?
And remember, the source emphasizes that the administration's goals are quite obvious because they are stating them publicly. They aren't hiding this. They're saying the quiet part out loud.
Which brings us back to that Stephen Miller influence. It feels strategic, not accidental.
No, it's a stress test. They are testing the system to see where it breaks. If Minnesota folds, or if this pretext works there, the model is proven for other states.
It's a sobering reality check. We started this deep dive with a shooting in Minneapolis, a tragedy for the family of Alex Prey. But as we've peeled back the layers, we've gone from that single event to a truth social decree, and finally to a potential strategy for invoking the Insurrection Act nationwide.
It connects the personal tragedy to the political machinery in a way that is just. It's hard to ignore.
It certainly is. And it leaves us with a lot to think about regarding how our government is supposed to function.
If I can leave you, the listener, with one thought, it's this. If the mechanism for safety requires suspending local control and constitutional protections, At what point does the cure become more dangerous than the disease?
That is the question of the hour, and we want to turn that over to you. After hearing all this, the conflicting accounts, the constitutional arguments, the strategic maneuvering, do you think local governments should cooperate with federal demands to maintain peace, or is resistance the only way to protect state sovereignty? We want to know where you draw the line. Let us know in the comments. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Stay curious and stay informed.